War. Basically, you remember, you know what war is. Currently in the world, in Afghanistan, in Iraq even, and in certain Libya, places around the world, there is war going on. Is war ever right? And what do Christians think about whether it's ever right to go to war? Now again, you need to know what your opinion is on whether war is going to right, whether it's right to go to war, and whether it's wrong, and when it's right and when it's wrong. So, what we need to do is understand this idea called a just war. That under certain circumstances, it may be right to go to war. This was invented or come up with the idea by a man called Thomas Aquinas, and he came up with 5 different areas that decided whether or not it was acceptable to go to war. Area 1 was, it has to be started by the proper authority. That means you can't just get anyone to decide, right, we're going to go to war. And today it would be someone like the United Nations or the government. Also, number 2, has to be a just cause. You can't go to war because you want someone's oil or diamonds or coal or something that will give you more money. No, that is unfair. For example, let's take the Second World War with Nazi Germany invading lots of countries. It would be seen to be just to push those countries back into Germany, for example, and allow countries that were living, for example, France or any other country, to live under their government rather than a German government. That would be considered to be a just cause. There are debates about whether the current war in Afghanistan and Iraq were just, and you could maybe bring that into an answer if the question actually merited you doing that. The third thing, good must result as a consequence of your actions. That means it must bring peace, stability. It must bring freedom for people as well in those countries that you're going to war in. And that's a really important point, that good, not evil, must be a part of that. Number 4, a last resort. War has to be a last resort. You can't go to war just when you are upset with people, even in government. You have to talk through and negotiate first. You have to have tried everything in order to try and get the people to compromise before going to war. War has to be a last resort. Number 5, no more force is necessarily used than what's necessary to get your action done. So you should not drop, for example, an atomic bomb on a city, and I'm not making any references to the Second World War, for example, today, on Tripoli, for example, where Colonel Gaddafi is. You couldn't drop an atomic bomb on there to try and end the war. That would be more force than necessary. And also with that, you should not target civilians or use civilians. It should be that only those involved in the war should be targeted. And no more force is necessary. You don't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. You use nutcrackers. Okay, so the question is war always wrong? Questions that are asked, and some people say yes. These people, for example, would be Quakers, and they would say, blessed are the peacemakers. And they would say that Jesus was a pacifist. He never went to war. Quakers don't believe war's right in any circumstance. They also believe that you should turn the other cheek, and that means basically you should never retaliate as well. Now, not everyone believes that Jesus was a pacifist. They didn't believe that basically you should be walked all over. That's what some people think pacifism is, where you don't fight, you're too scared and you're seen as a coward. Pacifists were, in previous wars, often seen as cowards and imprisoned. There's another group called conscientious objectors as well, who were very often, because of their conscience, imprisoned because they did not believe going to war was actually the right thing to do. And there are a couple of quotes that you can use. I've already said them really. Blessed are the peacemakers. So people who make peace in God's eyes are blessed. And Jesus said that as well. And also, Jesus said, love your neighbour. And another quote could be turn the other cheek. That means if someone hits you on one cheek, turn to him the other. Now that may not be meant to be interpreted as a literal, if someone hits you, turn around and say, hit me there please. It's a metaphor, it's symbolic. Don't retaliate as well.